Hey everybody, I'm Angela Walters and welcome to the Fillers Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. This video is part of a series where I'm sharing some of my favorite free motion filler designs. To see all the other designs in the video series, be sure to click the link in the description box below. In this video tutorial, I'm going to talk through the feather filler design. I'm going to show you how to take that elegant feather and use it to create a filler for bigger areas of your quilt. I'm thinking you're going to love it as much as I do. So let's get to it. If you've been quilting along with me on this Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along, you may have been surprised that we haven't seen any feather designs yet. Well, now I'm about to fix that. Feather designs are a beautiful way to add interest and detail to your quilt. However, in this instance, we don't want them to be such a standout design. We want them to be more of a filler, an all-over kind of shape. Basically, what we're going to be doing is quilting our feathers so that they go in different directions, and then we're going to add some filler around them to create a beautiful filler design. So starting from any point on my area, I'm going to quilt the spine of my feather, except I'm going to quilt it like an elongated swirl, ending in a curve. Then I'm going to echo the swirl a couple times just to build it up a bit. This is going to serve as the spine of my feather, and it can really be any length or any direction that you want to quilt it. I'm going to try to end along the outside of that curve so that when I start adding my petals, they'll be working their way around the outside. Now I'm going to be using the more custom feather shape here where I'm quilting my petals out in groups of 2. So I'm going to start by quilting one petal that goes out, then I'm going to backtrack and quilt another petal that comes into the spine. Once I touch the spine, I'm going to travel along it and repeat quilting those petals in groups of 2. And I'm going to keep doing that, working my way all the way around the outside of that curve. Now if you're struggling with quilting feathers or you've never been able to quite nail the design, be sure to check out my Fabulous Feathers Free Motion Challenge Quilting Along. It's a whole video series where I talk about nothing but feathers. By the time you're done with that, you'll be feathering quilts until they fly. And once I get to the end of my swirl, I have a choice to make. This is like a choose your own quilting adventure. If I want to add petals on the other side, I can echo back and add petals over there. Or I can leave the feather just as it is. For now, let's just leave it like it is, but here in a little bit I'll show you what it looks like to do the other way. So I'm going to use echoing to work my way back around that feather and use a filler design to fill in any gaps before I add my next one. It really doesn't matter what filler you use, but since we're already kind of working with that elongated swirl shape, I'm going to stick with my swirl design. And I'm just going to keep adding my swirls until I fill in that gap and I have room to add my next feather. Quilting that elongated swirl and then echoing it to help build it up. And then adding petals around the spine to turn it into that beautiful feather. And don't be afraid to quilt those petals nice and wide. You really want them to extend out into that unquilted area so that it fills in as much space as possible. As you're filling in your area, if you get to a spot where you don't have quite enough room to add another feather, no worries. Just add your filler, fill it in, and continue on. And then once you have room, it's time to repeat, quilting another elongated swirl that extends out into that area, echoing it, and adding the petals of your feathers. Not only am I quilting those petals so that they take up as much space as possible, I'm also using them to help me fill in any gaps in the quilting. So when I'm right here, I could quilt my petals so that it really extends out into that unquilted area and fills it in. This is actually a great way to practice the feather design if you're struggling with it. When I first started machine quilting, I could not figure out that feather shape, and ultimately quilting it like this is what helped it finally click. And then once I finally had the shape down, then I could quilt it bigger in borders and in other ways. So even if you're thinking, oh, I've never been able to get feathers, trust me, this is a great way to practice. If you don't like the look of a one-sided feather, once you get to the center of that swirl, you can echo back out and add petals on the other side. And don't forget to use that echoing to help you fill in any gaps, as well as to maneuver your way around the area. Another fun way to fill in any of those irregular unquilted areas is instead of adding echoing, you could just throw some petals in there. Even though they don't have a spine that they're connected to, it's still going to give you that nice curvy look. This is going to be one of those designs that I like to use in bigger areas. Since these feathers are a little bit longer and bigger, it needs a little bit more room to develop. But beyond that, it looks great on all kinds of quilts. Traditional, modern, you name it, it'll look great on it. And when we're done, we have a beautiful feather filler that's going to help those feathers shine just a bit without overwhelming whatever you're putting them around. But now that we've seen how to quilt this on a sewing machine, let's look how to quilt a slightly different variation of it on the long arm. I personally love how this design looks with the more custom feather petals. However, if you struggle with that design or you want a slightly different look, you can use a slightly different technique. This is great because you won't have any traveling and it does go together a little bit quicker. Still going to start out by quilting my elongated swirl and echoing it a couple times. Except this time I want to end at the top of my swirl because I'm going to work my way back out, adding those petals. I call this the more basic feather technique. But beyond that, everything else is still going to be the same. I'm still going to use another design to fill in any gaps between them, and whenever I have space, add another feather. Of course, there's nothing that says you have to choose just one type of feather. You can mix and match between the two, or quilt just one of them. No matter how you quilt it though, you're going to have a beautiful texture design that's going to look elegant on your quilts. Now it's your turn. If you're quilting along with me on the custom panel I put together for the challenge, fill in the areas highlighted in yellow over the different designs we've learned throughout this week's challenge. To find out more information about all the other designs in this free video series, just click the link in the description box below. Be sure to join me for my live chat every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central, where I talk about free motion quilting designs and answer your questions live. Until then, everyone, happy quilting.